and foremost, let's get into Dragon Age the Veilguard news. So this news comes courtesy of, well, this article is by IGN, but that is taken from a Game Informer article where they interviewed developer Corinne Bush. Corinne Bush, my apologies. Got some really interesting news to talk about with the difficulty options and customization, but the difficulty options in particular, I think, is quite relevant at the moment, considering the discussion that was surrounding Shadow of the Erdtree. So we're going to start off with the article, read a little bit about it, and then I'm going to talk about my opinion about difficulty, particularly with the customization, but there's a big one here just in this first little bit alone. So the article starts off simply by saying, features like the hundreds of character customization sliders and pronoun options separate from your character's gender live up to game director Corinne Bush's promise that Dragon Age the Veilguard was created with inclusivity in mind. So, first and foremost, you can already hear a particular corner of the internet scream and cry out in shame. Now, when it comes to playing single-player games, particularly RPGs, where you're creating a character, most people imprint their own personality on the character. And so for all those out there that did a chaotic evil run in Baldur's Gate 3, I hope you're getting the help you need. But the point is, most of the time we are going to make a character and then make decisions in-game based on our own personal alignment in real life, based on our own personal choices, what we would make in that decision. So for people out there that do go to associate with another gender or don't associate with any gender whatsoever, they should be allowed to play video games their way, and particularly when it's a single player game. So if I'm playing a game and I'm deciding to play as myself in game as a male, then someone thousands of kilometers away who's playing as a non-binary character is not going to affect me in the slightest. And if anybody pretends that it does, then you need to get your head checked. Like seriously, like the whole hullabaloo about Starfield was just absolutely absurd. So to have another AAA game coming out that is keeping this in mind and seems to be pushing it, that's fantastic. And honestly, it's really giving me hope that Veilguard is going to actually be a lot better than what I expected it to be. I must admit, I'm getting a little excited about Veilguard now. I wasn't in my previous video where I went into some of the options available and some of the more information about characters and gameplay from a Discord chat that BioWare had middle of June. Now reading this, I'm like, okay, they seem to be taking it in the right direction. Anyway, the article goes on. This desire was carried over into the difficulty options too, which include standard choices like the story-focused storyteller path, a balanced adventure mode, or the more crushing nightmare mode, which can't be changed once a playthrough is started. That's all pretty stock standard stuff. Let's be honest, like that's not breaking the mold anywhere soon, but what is really pushing it is in a good direction as well, is the Unbound difficulty. So this is where BioWare's latest gets interesting in regard to its Unbound difficulty mode. The option allows players to tailor their Dragon Age the Veilguard adventure as they please with a variety of tweakable settings. Some highlights include the ability to adjust how wayfinding guides the experience, aim assistance, an auto-aim option and a wider, narrower parry windows or narrow parry windows. Enemy and player damage can also be fine-tuned, as can enemy pressure, but the real game changer might be the option to turn off death for your character entirely. These are all options meant to make Dragon Age the Veilguard more inviting for every kind of gaming fan. This is fantastic. Really, this deserves all the praise. This is what we need, and I think more games need to be doing this. They need to be giving us modular difficulty, particularly, and this is an unpopular opinion, particularly the Soulsborne genre. With all due respect to the artists, and video games are art, some games aren't, but I would say a good 75% of video games are art. People just don't have the same amount of time as they used to. I've said before, you might get a new job. You might have to work, unfortunately, 2 jobs just to keep the cost of living down for yourself. You might start a family. Your family might grow. There might be a tragedy in your family or your personal life. And your favorite video game genre or series might be meant for people who can invest far more time than you have. And you might miss out entirely, or you might not be able to have that full experience because you can't, quote unquote, get good. Having modular difficulty, being able to fine tune the experience for each player while still maintaining the core of what your game is fantastic. I think it's what we need to see more often. Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous is another absolutely perfect example of that, where you can go in and you can tweak every little detail, how much damage a critical hit does, how much XP you earn, everything like that. So to see this coming out in the AAA space, particularly from a company like EA, I'm not saying EA is completely evil, but they're a few steps away. This is great. And I think this is what we need more in the gaming world, as I said, particularly in the Soulsborne genre, which is fantastic. It is a great genre. It's done a lot for video game industry, action video games in general. But at what point do you look at yourself as a video game developer and think, okay, we're seeing this starting to spread throughout the industry. When is it time for us to jump in? And again, how do we mitigate that? I discussed that in a video not too long ago. I'll leave it in the description below. Either way, we're going to finish up with IGN here, where Corinne goes on to say, none of these are cheats. It's an option to make sure all players of all abilities can show up. Again, fantastic. This is what we need. This is exactly what we need in video games. And for people to say otherwise, who disagree with this, you are valid to your opinion, but I just want to know why. Why do you think that other people out there can't enjoy a video game who may not be able to have the time to invest anymore, or who might find it too difficult? Tell me why. We are going to have a quick look at the Game Informer article in question, which is where IGN got their information from. Thanks, Google. Appreciate that. Anyway, so the article starts off by saying, throughout my visit to BioWare Edmonton's office for Game Informer's current cover story about Dragon Age: The Veilguard, game director Corinne Bush reiterates that the studio designed the game with inclusivity in mind. We've just gone over that. Fantastic job. Now, this article is by Wesley LeBlanc, and it's quite interesting, this next sentence, which I do have I have some questions about Wesley. It's easily the best character creator in series history. I have no doubt about that. But this next part, possibly the most robust I've ever seen in a video game. As I said, I'm not sure, Wesley. I'm sure it's good. I'm sure it's fantastic. But the most robust you've seen in a video game, maybe a video game that you've played, but you only have to look at games like Black Desert Online or any Korean MMO. Even Dragon's Dogma 2 had an incredible, absolutely incredible character customization. So to say that this is the best that you've ever seen in a video game, it's a bit of a stretch, but we will see. We'll find out soon enough. Anyway, but that feeling doesn't end in the character creator. It also extends to the world. Ice Mage and Private Detective companion Nev Gallus has a prosthetic leg, for example, and in the way you can play Veilguard. So I think what Wesley is trying to say here is that you can play this game even if you are handicapped. I'm not quite sure where he's going with that. Or if you can create a character who might have a prosthetic limb, which would be fantastic. I hope that's the case. Anyway, the rest of the article does dive into the fact that you can have a storyteller mode, an adventure mode, or a nightmare mode. Again, nightmare mode is not something you can switch off mid-game, which is completely understandable. One interesting thing here that I wanted to point out is that you can adjust the combat timing to make parrying easier or harder, with a balanced, forgiving, or third harder option. So this is, again, another example of modular difficulty. Not only can it make the game a little bit easier for people, but you can give yourself a much harder experience. If you want to play Veilguard as, say, a Soulsborne that is unforgiving, you can do that. So it goes both ways. And again, I still don't understand to this day why people are against this, why they are gatekeeping games out from people who either are fans and just don't have the time, or who want to test it out but are so intimidated by the skill level that they find it really tricky to dive into. Some gaming communities are also toxic. Most Soulsborne communities that I read in when talking about Elden Ring in particular are very inviting, and they do try and help out the community. I think the best gaming community I've seen is Baldur's Gate 3. You only have a look at the subreddit to find that they're really nice. They're answering some really interesting questions. Some questions you could probably do with a Google search. But anyway, that's a story for another day. Don't know if I'm going to get into that. I want to know what you think about Dragon Age of the Veilguard, what you think about these difficulty customization options, and what you think about modular difficulty in to begin with? Or do you think this should be something we should be exploring in all genres? Do you think it's something that should be in the Soulsborne, or do you think it is a fad? Please let me know in the comments down below, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video. See you later. Dum 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 dum. Do 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 do. Da da dum dum da dum dum. Do da 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 da. Do 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 do. Do 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 dum 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 do 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 dum 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 dum. Do 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 do. Da da dum dum da dum dum.